Good evening and welcome on or should I say, good evening and welcome
Good evening.
on a Halloween week generation movie. My name
Bah.
is J.W. Colwell. I'm joined as always by my good friend and partner in film history, Rich Drees. Rich Drees, how are you doing tonight?
I'm exhausted.
I know you're
I was
film.
supposed to rest this weekend, and I did not. I did,
You don't
and then I
you
just
don't
got up and ran like a maniac today.
you did a bunch of stuff. We're running a little bit late because we're want to make room for everything that you have to do.
Yes, and I
But I'm
appreciate
happy.
that.
I'm happy to do that, and we hope everybody understands. Tonight, you are invited to the Reverend Lowe episode. Um, I don't know what we're going to call next week's episode because I don't know that there's that maybe the Tarman episode. Because we're doing Silver Bullet tonight, so we did the Jerry Dandridge episode last week. This is the Reverend Lowe episode. I guess we should say spoiler alert because it is a werewolf movie. So we've been naming the villains pretty harsh.
We'll get into it, but I figured it.
Yeah,
This is my first time ever watching the movie. Was
so
yesterday?
you've never seen it?
No, and we'll get into this more as we go. As we get into the film.
I'm intrigued.
As I was sitting there watching, going, I'm really excited to see Everett McGill in something that's not directed by David Lynch. And then I was like, oh, it'd be wild if he turned out to be. And then
Lo and behold.
Yeah, I mean, I even wrote down something, which we'll get to too. As I'm watching the film, I was like, huh, right there at the beginning, I had a thought, I wrote it down. And
yeah, he's the only one who looks out of place on the stage. Although at this point in his career, there are other villains in the movie, actor-wise. There are Terry O'Quinn at this point has been I think he's been the stepfather. Hold on. No, he wasn't the stepfather yet. So Terry O'Quinn was not a villain yet. But the other good thing about this movie that's interesting is
so you can't.
There are some really good character actors in the background of this movie that end up doing bigger things in the next couple of years. Nobody pays attention we'll talk about it, but nobody pays attention to the fact that James Gammon will eventually get on the phone about some white walls and lead a ragtag group of Cleveland Indians to win the American League title in Major League. But in this, he's just trying to get some Rheingold and gets, his head cut off on the train tracks. So it's all good. It's all good. Lots of character actors in this movie. But tonight we are doing Silver Bullet.
This is 7 as a werewolf movie, as I think about it.
Yeah, well, they're well, and that's interesting. Well, because that's the excuse he makes, right? We're gonna get into it, but that's the excuse he makes is that I'm putting all these sinners to bed, and I can't kill myself because that would be the ultimate sin. And one of the people I murder, well, first off, we have maybe our first MAGA voter in the history of 80s films. Clearly first MAGA voter in the history of 80s films in this movie. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Some comments. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan.
Hey, good evening,
Congratulations
Ken.
on your 9 diabetes. Ken's having a good health week. Good evening, all. Good evening, Joe Ridgely, Grandpapa. Did you get a lot of rain up there? Yes, we got a lot of rain. Things are not the pool is looking very ominously over the lip of the pool. The water in the pool is dangerously getting out into our lawn. Not sure if I'll ever go to the movie theater again for upgrading our stereo sound to 7.14 Dolby Atmos. I have much more comfortable recliners too. Not on this show. You can't talk about that shit on this show, Joe Ridgely. No. We always want to go to theaters. As a matter of fact, I may make a beeline tomorrow. I have to go 45 minutes away, but I think I'm going to make my 28th movie of this Halloween season. I think is going to be Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein on a big screen.
Highly recommended on a big screen.
It's a 45 minute drive, and it's not AMC or anything. So it's like I'm gonna have to go out of my way to do it.
I would drive wait a minute, I did drive 3 times as much.
I know you drove 3 times as much. Let's talk about the October. Okay, so first off, we're in the middle of Halloween season, but what I want to talk about is an interesting box office phenomenon that's happening, Rich. Let's start with this company called Crunchyroll, and let's start with this company that is basically, at the very least, it guarantees a movie to open a weekend, right? So Sony Pictures owns Crunchyroll. They make these animated anime films that are like very niche, very kind of pop culture-y, very much on the thing. They made a movie, a Demon Slayer movie that came out last month that grossed over $100 million. And then this weekend they have a movie open up called Chainsaw Man, the movie, Reze Arc. It grosses 18.03 million at the box office. It beats out Regretting You, which is a movie, for 13.6 million, and Black Phone 2 in its second weekend, which I think is, Black Phone 2 in its second weekend, and then Regretting You, which is this movie that everybody is buzzing about because of the author of a book. And then it also beat out the Oscar bait of the weekend, which is the Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere, right? So that movie only grosses 8.8 million, which isn't great. Black Phone, by the way, only dropped 53%, which is very low for a.
Congratulations to Scott Derrickson in there, and
he had some. He did Black Phone too, and got away from Marvel. They were having a lot of trouble with Marvel. He was working on some things for Marvel. But what I want to talk about is this interesting concept that these anime movies, they can open on weekends when there are no other movies opening. And they're kind of saving movie theaters this fall. It's kind of a big story. When you think about like the flotsam and jetsam of, we were expecting a very dull September, October. There was nothing on the schedule that said, hey, we're going to have a big hit movie here. I mean, we had people who were interested in Tron, but you and I both kind of easily knew that Tron wasn't going to gross a ton of money. And I just think it's interesting that I think what you're going to see going forward is, one, I think you're going to see other studios develop some anime. And two, I think you're going to see them kind of get plugged in where there are no big openings on the horizon. Like they can't, I don't think maybe the anime movies could go up against a big movie. Maybe something like the Demon Slayer movie could go up against something big. I don't think they can because they're niche and they're not going to get the big screens they need to make $18 million. Chainsaw Man had every major screen at the AMC I go to this weekend. It had the Dolby screen and it had the IMAX screen for the opening weekend, which I thought was
impressive that Sony could leverage that. Now, I'm thinking though, anime's been around forever. I mean, I was in college, for goodness sake, when I saw my first real anime film. I mean, okay, growing up, I had Speed Racer and Star Blazers and some of those other shows that that first wave, when it was still just called Japanimation, that if you're a Pennsylvania person, Eastern Pennsylvania person, you either were living in Philly or you were getting it on your cable system on channels 17 and 29. Or, if you're closer to New York, maybe channel 11 and channel 9 out of Secaucus. And that was all like one level. That was kind of like intro level for us. And then Akira hit a few years later at the end of the 80s.
Vampire Hunter D too.
I saw Akira on a bootleg VHS. That was a rip from the Japanese Laserdisc with no English subtitles. My friend Logan came to visit me for a weekend in college, and she brought this with her, and we sat there, and she kind of explained who was the who and why things were happening. But I was just mesmerized, transfixed by the amazing art of it all. The design, the filmmaking involved in this. And it's slowly kind of reached into American subculture, and over the decades has been building a larger and larger fan base. And now, you have so many people who are into Avatar: The Last Airbender or One Piece or some of these other shows. And I think it's kind of getting to a critical point where there's a generation, maybe Gen Z or so, are like, you guys, you older folks, had your superhero movie cycle. Maybe we're starting to see the start
the next
of an
cycle.
anime, of a big anime cycle.
I will tell you,
because I'm always up and open for new and different filmmaking and storytelling vehicles.
I'll tell you where that's an interesting point. My sister came to visit. She didn't really want to watch any movies or anything, but she had anime titles. And then I said, do I need to catch up on anime? She goes, I watched some of your podcasts and nothing is about anime ever. And she's like, you need to get cracking on that. And then she went into my phone and she plugged into my Netflix about 10 things, and basically looking up as she was plugging them in. And she was like, can you handle this? And I'm like, yeah. And then we got to one or two of them where I was just like, why would I watch that? And she was like, because she's on, LGBTQ. And it was like, it was this. So she was like, okay, probably not for you, but I'm going to plug in these other ones. The one about volleyball, I'm going to leave off because you don't feel comfortable with it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And you got to know your limitations, but it's an interesting quandary. And I think, Crunchyroll and this, this movie grossing 18 million after Demon Slayer grosses over 100 million at the box office. And they're kind of saving theaters. Now, the other thing, Black Phone 2, saw it this week. Fantastic. A complete, first movie is a serial killer movie with a little bit of supernatural. Second movie is pure supernatural with a little of the serial killer. And to completely refurbish. And the idea that Ethan Hawke is still hanging around, playing the villain and making some money, making some scratch, and also making like a cool movie. It has more in common with Nightmare on Elm Street than anyone wants to admit. I would imagine I imagine Scott Derrickson looks at it and goes, I like a Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm like, I like a Nightmare on Elm Street too. So guess what? Cool. I went with a person who's never seen a Nightmare on Elm Street, and they're like, so that's what Freddy's like? I'm like, yeah, Freddy's very much like that. And I said the movie kind of like, there's a fight at the end, Rich, that is right out of a Nightmare on Elm Street 3 where everybody's working together and trying to uncover the bones in the proper amount of time. And I had visions of Amanda Kruger walking out in her nun's habit and pointing at where Freddy's bones were buried at, and then they had to fight with the skeleton. And it's very much like that, which is the highest compliment I can pay it. If I say it's as good as a Wes Craven movie, that's about as high a compliment as I can pay. But it was really good. And I think the really interesting thing is it completely changed the format of the franchise, which is not easy to do, right? If you have a franchise that people are used to, they could have just went back to the well and had like another, an earlier version of the killer with a different kid, and the kid could have maybe gotten out, but they didn't. They went full hog, and the people that are in the movie are all now bigger stars. The lead went from being a 12-year-old kid in the Black Phone. He's now, riding a dragon for Universal in one of their big franchises now. So really good. I highly recommend it. I didn't get to see the Bruce Springsteen movie yet. Just it kind of like time is I'm in the middle of my 31 for 31. I did, however, last week get to go to the movies and see this on a big screen with a crowd. And I sent a message. Now, my story with Scream is interesting, Rich. Opening day of Scream fell on the day after a cast party in college in December at the University of Scranton. And I had made plans with a bunch of people, and everybody was hungover, but one person showed up, and we went to see Scream at a matinee. And we were there. There was 10 people at Steamtown that morning to see it at 1:00. And we were the first people to walk out of Scream in Scranton, and then just blah, it's amazing, blah, blah, you know, oh my God, it's a reinvention, you know. And when I went into the movie this week, I texted my friend and said, hey buddy, thinking of you. And he wrote back, yes, I remember the day. What a day it was. It was glorious. I'm like, yes. And it still is, you know, all these years later. Also celebrating a big milestone. And I'm wearing the shirt, but we're going to talk about it more tomorrow night on Loud and Nerdy. Because I think it's Bloody Disgusting, is doing a giant franchise dive on Halloween movies, asking fans to rank them. All 13 of them. And so I sat down and did the rankings, and I think we're going to do it tomorrow night on Loud and Nerdy. But Halloween is celebrating 47 years this past weekend. 47 years of Michael Myers. 47 years of like one of the greatest posters of all time. That poster, amazing. And then 47 years of Jamie Lee Curtis in her first role. 47 years of watching The Thing or Forbidden Planet. And just, you know, just 47 years. But tomorrow night on Loud and Nerdy, Rich, we're going to do a franchise deep dive, all 13 movies, and we're going to rank them. Should be fun. Now, I know you're not a horror fan, but Halloween, I think, is one of the movies that sets the standard by which other movies are judged. And it actually, the big news this week is that in a big, huge, I think, Fandango poll, it was regarded as the greatest horror film of all time, or maybe the greatest slasher film of all time. Either one. Is it in the running for the greatest horror film of all time? What do you think?
I would think so. It's certainly the most influential, or one of the most influential of the 1980s films. So, you know, it has that going for it. I mean, it's 70 whatever, but it influenced everything that came after it all the way through the 80s.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger influence than like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or, you know what I mean? Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another great movie, but Halloween was the one by which you can come up with a storyline, and, you know, and we talked about it last week with The Mask and everything. Like, it's a great movie that I think is finally at the point where it's, you know, John Carpenter is, you know, in the middle of like a resurgence where he's going out doing concerts. You know what I mean? Anyway, when does Frankenstein come out on Netflix? November 7th. That is correct, Ken McKernan. Thanks, Ken. I think Tron was made for toy collectors. I don't know that it was. Like, there's not a lot of toys in the new Tron movie. Go. Video game people, maybe. Because maybe you could get, like, first anime was 1907. Highlander had a decent anime movie, Ghost in the Shell 2, also Blood the Last Vampire. The one I said was Vampire Hunter D, where the guy kind of looked like The Undertaker. Marvel made a few good anime cartoon series a while back, easily found. I went on an anime kick when Netflix first came out. I received the DVDs in the mail, I think. Wow, that sounds so primitive now. Damn autocorrect. You put DVDs. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I think so. It is primitive. Also, the idea that you can explain to a child, a 7 and 9-year-old, that you would be going to a place on a Thursday or Friday night and picking out 5 movies and walking out with them, as opposed to just sitting down and popping something on the TV.
Or you go to a place to pick out 5 movies, wind up having some cool conversations with strangers you will never see again, and then getting your movies and going home. That's that communal aspect of the video store, not just Blockbuster, but any kind of video store, is something I do miss.
Well, I used to work at Blockbuster. It was glorious, Rich. On a Friday night, you would get some people that would come in, and they'd be adventurous. You could be adventurous with them. be like, well, how adventurous are you? I really like Reservoir Dogs. Okay, well, there's this movie called Killing Zoe. That's completely batshit insane, but it's by the same people.
There's this Hong Kong film called City on Fire. You should probably watch all that stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lost thing. It's a lost. I do miss it. I do miss the idea of like waiting at the front for the right movie to come in.
Yeah.
One
other thing. I don't know how many more news stories do you have, by the way? Because there's one I saw today. I missed it last Thursday. They announced that earlier this month, Barbara Gibbs passed away. Now, that name probably doesn't ring a whole lot of bells for anybody, but she was an advertising copywriter, and you definitely know her work. She was the one who wrote, "In space, no one can hear you scream." Perhaps one of the most iconic poster lines for any movie whatsoever. She wrote for, she wrote a lot of other ones. She did Postcards from the Edge, Having a Wonderful Time, Wish I Was Here. I'm just trying to roll through.
No Way Out, Is It a Crime of Passion or an Act of Treason? Fatal Attraction, On the Other Side of Drinks, Dinner and a One-Night Stand, Like a Terrifying Love Story. Desperately Seeking Susan.
Silkwood, Sometimes the Most Unlikely Person Turns Out to Be a Hero.
How about Kramer vs. Kramer? Ted Kramer's about to learn what 10 million women already know. Ouch. Yeah. Also, Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yeah,
it's a life so outrageous it takes two women to live it.
She gave a lot to not just the movies, but the movie going experience. I was reading
these about
people
this.
Don't get heralded all that much, and so I at least wanted to give her a moment now. That hopefully wherever she happens to be,
Ridley Scott credited her as
is appreciating the love that people have for what she gave.
Ridley Scott said she's one of the unsung heroes of the franchise when she passed away. Interesting. And think about that. That tagline actually ends up cementing that movie into lore, right? That's how important that particular poster.
And it's been riffed on for other, installments of the franchise as well. So.
Well, I remember. I'll never forget. We never got the movie, but I'll never forget the Alien 3 trailer that played where in space nobody can hear you scream, but this summer on Earth, you will. Like, so yeah, a genius ahead of her time.
That was the first situation.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen the whole uncut version of the original Halloween. Really? When you say you haven't seen the whole uncut version, are you watching it on AMC? That's weird. That's a weird. So you've never seen the boobies or anything? Never seen PJ Souls? Really?
Oh dear.
That's a shame. That's an incredible shame. Anyway, okay, but not a lot of stories tonight. We do have a movie to get to. This is the movie. Also, this poster is fantastic. It started in Maine, a small town. And every month after that, when the moon was full, it came back. And there's a tagline down the bottom. You can't really see it, but I want to read it to you because it's hilarious. It says Stephen King's Silver Bullet, great logo for the movie. And then it says, he makes evil an event. So this is
so much so that I have to have the proper drink for this movie tonight.
You have a Rheingold? Rheingold gets mentioned prominently 4 times in the movie.
No, I got me some Silver Bullet, baby. Little Coors Light. The Silver Bullet. $9 for this stupid joke, by the way. I had to buy a whole freaking 6-pack of this
a whole pack, a whole 6-pack. I thought you were going to go with the Rheingold. They drink. The one guy's talking about Rheingold at the beginning, and then the other guy is drinking.
I couldn't find any Rheingold at the local.
Well, I can't imagine you can. It's like an 80s beer that was like a 70s beer that probably died out.
Hung around too long.
Well, it's like the bottles in the movie remind me so much of like the old bottles that some of the people on my grandparents' street used to drink. The little brown keg bottles, like just weird. Okay, production. So you wouldn't think there was a lot of fighting for a Stephen King movie in the 80s, but there was a lot of fighting for this Stephen King movie. So the film was shot in and around Wilmington, North Carolina, and Burgon, North Carolina. So,
well, I mean, this is, of course, this is Daniel Attias's first feature. He kind of worked his way through film school and up through the DGA training program, doing the second assistant director shadowing and all that. Didn't want to do like the first AD part, so he kind of went back to school and did a short film that he used as a kind of like a calling card. Won some festival competitions and stuff, which got him the agent, and the agent got him in to meet Dino De Laurentiis, who wanted him to direct this movie. As long as King signed off, and he met with King. King was like, yeah, sure, he's a great guy.
He seems nice. There was another person that actually was gonna write it, but then he wrote a screenplay. De Laurentiis had a meeting with him, Don Coscarelli, who's one of the great, responsible for the Phantasm franchise, Beastmaster, Bubba Hotep. Completely amazing, fun, culty director. He comes into the meeting revising the script that Stephen King had written. And Stephen King looks at him and says, no. And then he looks at Stephen King and says, no, if you don't like my writing, we're done. And so the collaboration ended there. They arrived and they both had a fight, and they kind of like, they sent Coscarelli notes, and once he rejected the notes out of hand, Coscarelli was out. And so,
and I can see why, because for Dino De Laurentiis, who was a producer on this film, he had the rights on a whole bunch of Stephen King stuff. Stephen King was a cash cow to him, and he wasn't going to upset that apple cart by deferring to somebody.
And the idea that you have Stephen King actually writing the screenplay, and then you send the screenplay out to somebody to work on it, who's also a pretty decent horror film writer, and then the idea that they could get together at this point in their careers is probably not great. Then, they filmed for 2.5 months. It takes a really short time. They finished before Christmas. And there was talks about in the novella, the werewolf is kind of, he talks, which was originally they decided not to do that, and it was eliminated after a rewrite. They did, however, have a lot of cool things going on with Gary Busey at the time. Gary Busey was allowed by Attias to ad lib as the Uncle Red character, and
well, they also did some. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say they allowed him to ad lib, and then what they would do is they would take the ad lib scene, and they would review it against the scene with the regular dialogue, and King and Attias would sit back and go, sometimes they like the ad lib scenes better. So most of the final scenes for Gary Busey in this movie are him just riffing. And I was thinking about it today as I was watching it, knowing that there's a sequence where he's playing cards with Marty.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to bring up. That comes actually out of the pre-filming rehearsal process that they were doing. And,
well, again,
Attias had the two actors kind of like really workshop that. And then he took that to King, and King was like, yeah, sure, use it. It's great. And, I'll get credit for having written it. So.
No betting managers. But the interesting thing there is this is the third movie we've done in a row from the 80s, Rich, where the extensive rehearsal process plays out in the finished film, whether you like the movie or not. There is a bond with the cast that is aesthetically pleasing to 80s souls, right? Like if you're watching the movie as an 80s fan, there is all these different things where you like look up and you're like, it worked how long on this? How long was the fucking rehearsal process? Also, I need to point out that there was a huge fight over the Carlo Rambaldi design on the werewolf, right? So basically, Stephen King asked early on, he didn't want it to look like any of the werewolves in all the other movies that were making the scene in the 80s. I specifically, we're talking about The Howling, probably American Werewolf in London. So King's like, I want a plain werewolf. Carlo Rambaldi made what is affectionately dubbed by the fans of the film as the werebear, because it doesn't really look like a werewolf. It looks like a bear that maybe it has wolf features, but it doesn't really have full wolf features. And it's like Smokey Bear level size. So it's when they bring this costume design in, Dino De Laurentiis is like, that's terrible. And we're going to change it. We need a new design. And Carlo Rambaldi and Stephen King stood up to Dino De Laurentiis. And basically, Stephen King said, you can either keep the design of this werewolf that I like, or we can cancel the film out of hand. And Dino De Laurentiis said, okay, we'll do the film with this werewolf suit that I don't like. They bring in a modern dance actor, Rich, who can't function in the size of the suit. And then, if you pay attention to the credits, Everett McGill has to actually be the werewolf. And so he performed in the suit and gets a secondary credit that would have gone to somebody else. But he actually gets a dual role credit because he played the werewolf in full bear suit.
Yeah, and Attias wasn't really thrilled with that suit either. I was, as I was driving home today, I was actually listening to an interview with him. That was recently done.
It's a weird look. It's a completely weird look.
He wasn't happy with it, and he just was like, "Okay, I kind of had to approach it the way Spielberg did with the broken shark and Jaws. Show less of it, and that's going to be more." And I think that works pretty well. It's one of the things that works in this movie's favor.
It works in the favor because there are scenes where you see the size of it, but you don't necessarily. It's just you see like talons. Yeah, you don't need to see the detail. You just need to see it's kind of inertia, and it works.
And one other thing, because we're kind of past it on the casting. He did a lot of casting out of New York, of course, but that's where he got people like Bill Smirnovich, who was mostly doing stage at this point. Oh God, he's so wonderful in. Did you remember on A&E in the 90s, the Nero Wolfe mysteries?
Yeah, he was really good in that.
I loved him in that.
One of the things that's really
insane here, but they did cast a lot of Wilmington locals as well. The overweight deputy was a Wilmington local, and a couple of the other townspeople and stuff too. So,
and then what I was, one of the nice things about this movie is there are a lot of character actors in the background. Like we said, James Gammon earlier, he will go on to be in Major League. He's a very good character actor. Here, he kind of plays a drunk at the beginning, very short screen time. But you also have Lawrence Tierney, who many people will recognize from the opening of Reservoir Dogs, right? And as one of the great actors from the 30s and 40s, who was like a very, a stunning creature to look at when he was very young, and then became kind of like an amazingly grouchy and wonderful character actor in his later days.
He was one of the first Mike Hammers, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
And then you also have Bill Smitrovich, like you said. Terry O'Quinn, right? And Everett McGill, who is not necessarily a household name, but at this point he's been in a few David Lynch things. He was in Dune.
I was going to say, this is the first time I think I've seen him outside of a David Lynch film or project. He of course was Ed on Twin Peaks. And after Twin Peaks, he kind of retired, and they had to go search for him to bring him back for The Return a couple of years ago.
Well, and
I'm so glad they did,
really,
because they gave him such a happy ending. I actually cried.
And like I said, though, that's the other thing about some of these 80s movies. There's all these wonderful character actors that are lurking just below the surface. And Gary Busey this is before Gary Busey became the running joke that is Gary Busey now. This was Gary Busey at his height. This is before Lethal Weapon, before Predator 2, before all these movies where he becomes kind of an action star. But this movie, he is, I would say, if you ask Gary Busey fans who are not, doing the whole buttered sausage junk, this is the Gary Busey role that they may remember from their childhood, because Uncle Red is such a great king character. He's a drunk. He's been married 3 times, but he has a bond with the kid. You know what I mean? Like, and he's just very pleasant. Let's move on. It opens actually.
I did want to have one other thing. There was some tension between the director and De Laurentiis, though, of course, because it's Dino. And
he's fighting with
Attias wanted the film to kind of have more of a boy's adventure kind of thing, that he's out there with his sister and his uncle trying to figure out and solve this mystery of the werewolf, whereas so he was kind of aiming for like a PG-13 vibe to the film, maybe feel a little Spielbergian, if you will. And De Laurentiis was like, no, it's Stephen King. You've got to make it a hard R. And he was actually forced to go back and reshoot some of the werewolf attack scenes. Like the first scene, the scene where the pregnant woman is trying to commit suicide. The scene where the
father,
Corey Haim's friend's father is in the
greenhouse. He gets ripped down through the bottom of the greenhouse, but he lands on a board in the middle where the board goes shooting through his chest.
Yeah, that's he was De Laurentiis made him reshoot things to add more gore.
Which is
that's an interesting film kind of feels a little weird tonally.
Well,
and it was something I was thinking about while I was watching it, and then to hear the director say, "Yeah, that's why." It was like, okay.
Well, and also there's a whole thing. When you hear that Gary Busey was allowed to ad lib, and then you realize some of the funniest fucking lines in the movie are his lines. Like there is one line where it's the funniest line in the movie where he's like, I'm sorry. I expect it from him, but not from you. I'm having a really bad day, and also I didn't think I'd be living the Hardy Boys versus Reverend Werewolf. And he just kind of like exasperated, just kind of is yelling at them. I had no idea you guys were going to be sending poison love letters to our Reverend. And once you realize that we're ad lib, then you're like, well, that one's one of the great ones. The Hardy Boys versus Reverend Werewolf you can't beat that. And then they do kind of look. I mean, the one scene that gets the most play was shot at a church where they didn't know what they were shooting. Which is another fun production story that I should have said. They basically 2 different churches are used for the filming of the Zion United Methodist Church in Leland and the Holy Ghost Deliverance Tabernacle of Prayer for the werewolf church sequences. So I would imagine one was set up really nice and the other one was set up like kind of like a werewolf, because it's one of the scenes that everybody remembers from the movie. Because it's a really kind of a grand Guganol where everybody in the congregation starts changing. There is a really nice, also production wise, before we move on, there's a really nice reverse change that occurs at the end of the movie that's old timey. That's an old timey effects thing where it's camera looking at the actor through subtle things. And having watched some of the older movies especially Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It reminded me very much of that.
Yeah, it's some very, simple dissolves and such.
So box office, it opens almost 40 years and 16 days less than this. It opens on October 11th, 1985, wide release. It opens on 1,139 screens. It eventually gets to a max of 1,285 screens, lasting an average of 3.5 weeks or about 4 weeks in theaters. Opening weekend, it grosses $4 million on its way to a $10 million box office haul, although some of those numbers are like, you'll get different numbers. There's one that's 12.4 as well. That's a little high depending on where you want to go. We usually use the numbers here. And then, what it and eventually has, it doesn't necessarily do great at the box office, but if you were doing domestic box office adjusted for inflation, it's a $34 million movie in 2025. Which,
well, what's the budget adjusted for inflation though?
Budget is, well, the budget at the time was $7 million. So it's a pretty high budget considering, but at that point, Stephen King was getting every movie made under the sun. If you remember,
and Dino De Laurentiis split distribution with Paramount. He gave U.S. distribution to Paramount. He took the rest of the world, and then Paramount paid half the budget.
Yeah, so it's
not a bad investment for either. Really.
No, again, pretty good. Critical response then and now. Okay, so rewatching it today, it's not the greatest of movies, but what I will say is I think that's one of the things that comes up that it's not as good as Fright Night, obviously, but what I would say is there is a camaraderie amongst the cast, especially between Corey Haim and Gary Busey, that kind of like, it gives it like, there are a lot of 80s horror films. Not all of the 80s horror films have the casting bump that I think is prevalent here. Like the Megan Follows character, the sister character, and Corey Haim and Gary Busey, they make quite a formidable team when they're together, and they're actually really good. Megan Follows plays the sister to a T, who is stuck with the disabled child. And actually, there's a great non-PC 2025 moment where she calls him a crip, where she's like, I didn't make him crippled. And she's like, I didn't cause it. Why am I getting punished? And it's like a little bit weird there. But she's really like, there's a fineness to her acting in this movie that's really good. Busey and Corey Haim together are great. They have a instant camaraderie that there's a moment with the mom where she's like, he's got enough strikes against me. He's like, he doesn't have any strikes, right? And he's defending the kid, and she's like, I don't want him learning how to give up like you do. And it's so
which
it
is,
has
again that all of that came out of that scene improv.
Yeah, and so it becomes well, Busey's great. Busey's great in this movie. I would argue that
best scene in the movie, honestly.
So that's it's a scene where he's really sad and he's taking plugs from a bottle of wild turkey, right? He's just like taking huge drafts of wild turkey, which in the 80s was like the booze that if you really want to get drunk, that's the booze. And so,
I would say you could take out the werewolf element and this would still be an interesting family drama, at least.
It would be.
I think what helps push this movie, sell this movie over
to the cult. It becomes a cult movie because everybody cares about the kid. And also Corey Haim does a really good job. Like sometimes you're rewatching a movie and you're looking for, I know Corey Haim isn't disabled. And I was looking for him using his feet, and he doesn't ever in the movie, which is fantastic. But it's a really good performance. It's a nuanced performance. Like there's a great moment where him and Megan Follows have a moment where he embarrasses her. She falls in the puddle, and the next scene you see is him coming into the room, and he puts money on her dresser, and she's like, "What's that for?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, I ruined your pantyhose. Is that enough to cover it? I don't know." Like, and he puts the money down, and it's a really sweet. There are numerous sweet scenes within the movie that I think, elevated from the typical 80s horror film. Does that make sense?
No, it does actually. Yes. But then again, you have something like he's got a gasoline powered wheelchair that he zips around town in. Kind of just like that's not. That's my very first thought was like, no way is that thing fucking street legal, and no way would he have gotten.
Well, not only that, but like the mom is
right. Over. And
the mom is very worried about Uncle Red, but Uncle Red designing a high-powered drag racing wheelchair is fine. That's better than drinking. He's building a wheelchair.
Well, he's already paralyzed. How much worse could another accident be?
It can't get any worse. So we use Rotten Tomatoes as a good aggregate. This movie is at 43%, so people were not very kind. It's at 50% from the popcorn meter, but I think there's more of a positivity around it than there is a negative. Like the one review that I thought was amazing and funny, where you're just like, oh, that kind of sums it up. First off, Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars, which I think is great. And he says, one of the things he says, I feel it's more of a satire of Stephen King stuff, but who am I to judge? But he feels that there's a lot of sly satiric touches in the film, and he's very kind to it. And then somebody later on, when people were re-reviewing it, when I think of great horror films, when I think of great werewolf films, and when I think of a great King film, I think of this. What I would say there, right, is that this was at a time when Stephen King was churning out a lot of product. And so, it was just churning. It was spilling out.
He was churning out so much was good. He had to start putting some of it out under an entirely different pseudonym. So people, it wasn't just like flooding the market. He had to go, okay, I'm flooding the market, but under 2 different names, and people
right. And it's not always great. But I will say, like, I think the werewolf sequences are well done. The final fight is a pretty good final fight in a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
It's well established. Like the lights go out, and then Gary Busey gives a great moment where he's just like, I'm beginning to feel that old thing again. I'm beginning to feel like I'm a horse's ass. You should go to bed, and you should go to bed. And he's holding the silver bullet, and then the fucking werewolf comes through the wall, and it's like, holy shit. And the fight is actually substantially good. It's a pretty good fight because the uncle's trying to protect the kids. The bullet goes into the fucking. My favorite technical detail: Marty's reaching for the bullet, and there's a bunch of cigarette stubs in the fucking grate.
In the vent, yeah.
In the vent, and it's like, it's amazing. But I can understand. It's got a cheesy value to it. It's cheesy a little bit. I rewatching it today, I'm like, maybe you don't remember loving it quite as much, but the Busey and Haim stuff is really good. In the rewatch, I felt like the moments with the 3 of them are really good. Like that, their whole sequence. There's one sequence where he does the Hardy Boys versus Reverend Werewolf, where they're sitting on a bench and they're discussing it all out. And she's like, I don't know if he's a werewolf, but it smelled funky in that garage. And I know what I saw. I saw a bat. It wasn't a broomstick. And they're all like just bouncing off each other. And it's really kind of like really great. Corey Haim.
I like all that stuff with the family. I also like the stuff with the town, because you have the town slowly descending into paranoia and vigilance,
madness, running home.
Yeah, I think that was kind of well done. But we spend like an inordinate amount of time over here, and then we forget about this for 15-20 minutes while we're over here, and then we go back to it. Seems like those 2 storylines could have been better balanced,
better meshed. I think one of the things that happens in the movie, it's like every King project where it's a small town and you can see the seams of the small town at the beginning, and then the seams start to fray. And there are certainly better representations of him watching a small town descend into madness and fraying specifically something like The Mist, or you know what I mean, like where you can watch it happening, right? And this movie, like you can tell it's a smaller budget thing, and also like the two main things are like the picnic and the carnival that doesn't happen, and then the bar. Everybody's fighting at the fucking bar every 3 minutes.
The bar is the town. There is no like, oh, there should be, maybe people are like banging on the mayor's office door or something like that. No, it's every scene.
Every argument takes place in the bar. And actually, funny thing there is Terry O'Quinn never shows up to the bar. It's only his deputy that they're fighting with the other patrons of the bar. Essentially, Bill Smetrovich, who's basically saying, "This guy's not a good sheriff. He gave me a drunk driving ticket, and I don't like him. And now he can't solve these murders." And so I think what it is I think it's one of those Stephen King plots that either more got left on the chopping room floor, or it was just something that wasn't fleshed out well enough, where they were like, "We're just looking for a werewolf movie, Stephen. We don't need your commentary on how a small town frays apart, and we want, we need 3 or 4 kills, and we need chilling kill. We need Terry O'Quinn."
You basically injecting The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street into this werewolf movie.
Yes, and we don't need it. We just need you to kind of, and it does, like the other thing where there's, I want to call them Stephen King frills, right? They're the things he punches up his material with. There's a great sequence where Marty first off, the Reverend tries to kill Marty in broad daylight with everybody around. Tries to run him off the road. Again, completely out of place, because this guy's been very quiet about killing 3 people in the town, and he's also quiet about being a werewolf. And he's, so it's kind of odd that you choose to do it in the middle of the day. But then one of the frills that he tries to inject is that this is a bad preacher, and the preacher's like, "I'm killing all these people that are bad people, like they're not good people, like." And it's fine up to the point where, until you realize one of the people he's killed is a child who maybe is a little shit, but doesn't deserve to die for pulling pranks on people.
There is nothing I would call like a cardinal sin that this kid has committed, besides just being, a douchey prankster.
It is. This is the part where we talk about, it is the first time we ever, what could be described as a MAGA voter on screen that I can remember from the 80s. But there's a guy who stands outside after the kid has walked his daughter home in front of a crime scene and says, "Stupid Crip probably end up on welfare. We should electrocute all of them."
Charming.
Just amazing. Also,
I think that's just so you don't give a shit. You kind of happy that he gets mauled by a werewolf within the next 10 minutes.
He's so deserving.
Yeah.
But like I said,
here's what's funny though. I mean, when I started watching this movie, like I said, yesterday was the first time I've ever watched this movie. The first thing I noted here in my notes was, I write, moral question. If you're in the act of committing suicide but get mauled to death by a werewolf, heaven or hell are you going?
Heaven. You go to heaven. You're a murder victim.
I guess even though you're in the act of committing a sin, you don't fully commit it, so you still get to go to heaven. I was just like, that's weird. And then that ultimately turns out to be the crux of
his argument.
The Reverend's argument is like, I'm saving them from going to hell by murdering them. It's weird and dicey, and we don't know how he became a werewolf. But I mean, all of these characters are broken characters in one form or another. And
I think that works for the movie. And I think, like I said, I think the moral degradation of a preacher is something that Stephen King will again revisit numerous times. But he also
men of faith.
Yes, but I think the interesting thing here is, I think one of the things that happened, like I feel like there's a director's cut somewhere where there's a longer version of the movie where things play out a little bit longer. Because the movie's like an hour and 30 minutes. Like it's super fast.
There is no fat on this thing. It's very
lean. It's as lean and mean as you can get. But I think there's probably somewhere where it's like maybe like an hour and 50 minutes where there's, where Joe Holler, the sheriff gets maybe getting fired before he goes to solve the crime or whatever. Like where it's all the bells and whistles that you see in Stephen King stuff. Right. That it's all the bells and whistles you see in Stephen King stuff that you might not, that in later works becomes more prevalent. The other thing about it is this is just a novella that is being adapted. So it's kind of like it's called Cycle of the Werewolf. It's very short. It's a very short novella where it's put on bones. I think, one of the things that King was a little bit obsessed about, small town life, how it impacts small town life. So Tarker's Mills, 1976 is when the movie takes place. So, it's made 9 years later, right? It's 9 years after the fact, looking at a 70s kind of thing. And it's the
even though it's 9 years later, it sounds like our narrator is like 40 years older than
it's Tova Felcher. It's a great actress, but it's like why don't we have Megan Fellows? You know what I mean? Like maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a lot of interesting little weird choices. But I think like the end sequence and the werewolf church festival and some of the kills are so fun and engaging. They become a cult film, especially the werewolf church sequence where you have multiple people turning into werewolves. You have the organist kind of playing like a weird werewolf organist. And I don't necessarily think it's the best werewolf movie ever made, but it's a very good werewolf movie that will eventually, as we're talking about this, lead to other kind of like werewolf movies where family becomes part of the main, I'm thinking like Cursed or Ginger Snaps, where the werewolf doesn't necessarily isn't the focal point, the family is. And I think one of the things that comes out of this movie that I think is why it's so beloved in the small part of fandom that beloves the movie is the family stuff. Is like you said, the thing you were attracted to the most were these family sequences that could have been a really good alcohol drama from the 80s. You know what I mean? Like Uncle Red has a drinking problem as opposed to Marty has a werewolf problem. Right? You know what I mean? Like Uncle Red has a drinking problem. How do we fix him? He's been divorced 3 times. Like we should invite him for more barbecue. Also Uncle Red is giving weird gifts to Marty.
Yeah.
When I say weird gifts
Uncle
to Marty,
Red does sober up though. I think his alcoholism is like the point of the one scene,
sad.
And then
he's sad.
Really does.
Yeah, and I think
just a stern dressing down from his sister, I don't think is enough to like totally get him off the bottle the way the movie implies. I would have liked to see maybe a bit more subtler progression of that.
Well, no, but I think one of the things that comes across in that scene is not just. I think the scene is kind of impacted by the fact that he really does love Marty. Marty's the only one that gets him, right? Sometimes you find in life that the only people that really get you are the people that are family that other people in the family don't really, they tend to like, I don't get along with that person. But I think the other franchise, the legacy of the franchise, like Corey Haim goes on to a very big career after this movie, right? He gets to 87, he gets the Lost Boys, he gets like his career trajectory out of this movie is, the person that I would most put it into same kind of trailblazing kind of thing. So I would say, he goes from this movie, Silver Bullet, he then stars in Murphy's Romance, same year, right? And also Secret Admirer. He then goes to Lucas in 86, right? So that's his big event movie. Then he goes to The Lost Boys, License to Drive, Watchers, Dream a Little Dream. This movie shoots him up, directly upward, whether or not, you know, and Corey Haim made some really great movies in the late 80s, right? He, you know, The Lost Boys is a bona fide classic. Also, Gary Busey comes out of this movie, legacy wise. He comes out as, you know, up until this point, he's not necessarily super bankable, but he comes out of this movie like, you know, he had done Buddy Holly, had done Big Wednesday, he'd done Carney, Fooling Around, Barbarossa, DC Cab. Then he does Silver Bullet. Then he does Eye of the Tiger. Then he does Lethal Weapon. Then Predator 2 and Point Break and Under Siege. So he comes out of this movie and kind of also goes upward, right? You know,
yes.
Good to work with, excellent on set, you know, before any of the bad things happen in his life. And then Stephen King, he has a minor film career. He and makes some books and makes some movies at the box office. But like this one is like, this is one of the ones I was looking it up last night. He only wrote 19 of the movies.
Oh, and JW just disappeared on us. Excuse me. So I think he was about to say that Stephen King only wrote about 19 films, and I was one.
I always I mess up on things every once in a while. Sorry about that, Rich. But I was gonna say he only wrote 19 of the movies he ever was responsible for, right? Where he you okay? Jesus Christ. Everybody's getting a little bit sick.
Yeah, I'm okay.
And this is one of the 19. So I would say that, you know, one of the things that comes out of this for him is that he understands the concept that he can kind of like control his own destiny on film. He doesn't necessarily have to take right for the answer. Ken writes, Everett McGill, The People Under the Stairs. Yes. A fantastic Wes Craven movie that does not get talked about enough in the 90s. People Under the Stairs also has Everett McGill in it. And Alice Creed as well. So, but this movie, you know, I think the legacy of it is that it becomes a cult film where the family matters in a werewolf movie. I think that's the biggest legacy of it. And I know it's not necessarily the best movie I've ever made you watch. Also, I did not know you've never seen it before. But it's also not the worst movie I've made you watch, which I feel pretty good about.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the script is a little uneven. Like I said, it needs to mesh its two storylines together better. But there's enough meat on the bone here to make it a
family, right?
This is the second food analogy I've made tonight.
You are. I think you're hungry.
I think I need to go and make some dinner because I haven't eaten since I got to work.
That's a good point. It's a great place to stop. We got one more movie left in our Halloween binge. It will be on November 3rd, however. November 4th? November 4th. So it will be a little bit late. Next week we got this Return of the Living Dead. Have you seen this one?
This one, no.
You've never seen Return of the Living Dead?
No.
Wow. Okay.
This
one. Now I'm going to say, I love Fright Night, but I think Return of the Living Dead, and I said this on Loud Nerdy the other night, I think Return of the Living Dead is the best non-Romero zombie film ever made. So it's, I don't know if that means anything to you, but what I will say is, I think you're in for a treat. This one's actually really good. This one's dark and funny and comedic and also kind of like just batshit insane. Absolutely crazy.
One of the few things I know about it is James Karen is in it. Wilkes-Barre's own James Karen. He's
fantastic. He's great.
Well, he's James Karen. What do you expect?
Oh my God.
This is going to be fantastic.
Just so you know, this is probably the quintessential James Karen role. Just so you know. I know you've never seen it, and I can't talk about it enough. This movie, is, it's gory and it's amazing and it's well done and it's got a realistic, the most realistic zombie movie ending ever. And
a better role than his ongoing role as in the 70s and 80s as the Pathmark spokesman.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a great James Cameron. It's a great James Cameron role. Clu Gallagher's in it too. Culler's in it as well. He's fantastic as well. It's a batshit movie. I can't wait for you to see it now. Now that I know you haven't seen it, I can't wait. Where can people find your other stuff? I know you're working on the other podcast you're working on tonight early. That's why we were a little bit late. Yep. Where can people find your stuff?
All of my writings can be found at filmbuffonline.com. I also host 2 different podcasts. One is called the Big Picture Podcast, which I do with my very best friend, Natasha Bogutsky, which we have not recorded in a little while now.
We're almost close around Christmas. We should be getting a Natasha visit. It's like
I know.
It's like Santa.
The other podcast, though, that I do is the Film Scribes, the official podcast of the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle. And that's why we were late today, because I produced that one and we were recording our big Philadelphia Film Critics, Philadelphia Film Festival kind of reflections, roundups, wrap-up episode. And we had 6 critics altogether. So this is going to be an absolute nightmare for me to edit over the next couple of days. But keep your eyes out. Film Buff Online also has a Facebook page where we like to post fun news and information and on this date and film history tidbits, stuff like that. And you can find me on the socials on Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter at FilmBuffRich. And that's also where I usually throw out like little notices that I've posted and written stuff.
So we got two new movies that you've never seen. JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, all those places. Also, you can catch me on Tuesday nights with my good friends on Loud Nerdy. That'll be Tuesday tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's big thing is we're going to rank all 13 Halloween movies.
Ooh.
Should be great. If you have any knowledge of me as a person, you know what's going to come in dead last. Anyway, for me, also we got this big thing coming up. New night, new host, new time, new Indie Brigade. And that is a big thing coming up on the night before Thanksgiving with our new host, Thomas J. Churchill, filmmaker. He has a movie called The Salem Chronicles out. Check it out. It's available wherever you get your movies. Next week, we go to Louisville. We go to a small place, little town, Turn of the Living Dead, the best non-Romero zombie film ever made. And Rich gets to experience it for the first time. That would be an interesting watch. I would love to see your reactions you should just set up your phone and just give me reactions as the movie plays out. Because
I refuse to do reaction videos. I'm sorry.
It's a batshit. Well, I just want to see your reaction to a few of the jokes. Like, I would kill to see your reaction to this line. Okay, I'm not gonna run it. Anyway, comments as we end. Have you? What is this? Have you seen the other 4 Return of the Living Dead movies? Well, don't. 2 is okay. 3 is bizarre, and 4 is not great. 3, it's 3. It's not 4. 2 is decent. 2 isn't as bad as you think it is, Ken. And 3 is off the rails. 3 is ahead of its time, but also not good. So
thank you for that great consumer warning, though, Ken.
Yeah, that's a good warning, Ken. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming to Generation Movie. Go see a movie. Back to the Future is going to be back in theaters this week in IMAX and on big screens for the first time.
Guillermo del Toro is also coming this weekend. Yorgos Lanthimos'
Begonia is coming.
In limited Regal Cinemas, the return of the Spike and Mike Sick and Twisted Animation Festival of shorts.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Yes, that's something I am very excited for. If I only go see one thing at the movies this weekend, it's going to be that.
Well, I haven't seen Begonia yet, so I'm going to see Begonia.
Sick and Twisted gave us Mike Judge and so many other great animators in the early 90s.
I don't really have a lot of Regals down here. I'll look for it.
It might be beyond Regals. I just know it's a Regal here in Scranton.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You have a great Halloween. We want to wish everybody a happy Halloween from everybody at Generation Movie and the Indie Escape Network.
Yes.
Thank you for watching tonight's Silver Bullet and the Reverend Lowe episode. And we'll see everybody next week for what I think will be the Tarman episode. Thanks for joining us.